And we are live.
Okay, I hope you all out there came prepared because I sure as hell did. I have Wendy's, I have Funyuns, I have Doritos.
Yes.
I have been researching this topic in depth all day long, and I surprisingly have still come to the conclusion that I like it recreationally. So this is why I'm not in the debate. I'm kind of biased, but we do have three very special people with us. Where to start? Somewhere in this layout is Frankie.
I'm in the middle.
Oh, Frankie's in the middle. Bran, the law from the Geek Room, is with us. Hello, Bran.
Hello.
And as always, everybody's favorite Christian apologist, S.J. Thomason, is back with us.
Hi there.
S.J., we're all curious. Which stance are you taking in this debate? You're definitely going pro weed, right?
No, I'm going against recreational marijuana.
What? Come on.
Is that a shocker?
And it is a little bit. I am Kyle Curtis, and I am joined by someone who dressed up for the occasion. He put on his suit for the
weed debate. Yes.
Yeah. So you know it's something. You know it's a big deal. But Steve McRae. Hello, Steve.
I am not partaking today. I don't partake of it, but go have at it, people.
Boo. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So tonight we will be discussing whether or not marijuana should be legalized recreationally. I think that everybody in here pretty much agrees that it should be legal medically. So I don't think that's you would agree with that, right, SJ? I don't want to misrepresent your position.
I think it should be legal medically for people truly in need. What's really interesting, though, is they found out that the average user, and they did a study of this in 2007, the average user of medical marijuana actually is 32-year-old white male who has no history of any sort of life-threatening diseases or anything. And also the same person has a history of drug and alcohol abuse. So that's the average medical marijuana user, though I do support it for people who are truly in need. I'll say that.
I have absolutely no proof of what I'm about to say, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Crime levels are going down. The age or the statistics of medical marijuana going up. Correlation? Maybe.
No, actually, it's the opposite.
Out.
But we'll talk about that.
And it's begun.
See, they're ready. They are ready to get into this. But before we do, let me try to attempt to make a couple of announcements. Following the show tonight, we have a very special video that we're going to be putting out. We did a collaboration with a lot of the atheist activists here on YouTube, some of the greatest content creators here, and they're all wonderful. Every one of the submissions were fantastic, and we got a really, really good video out of... Oh, I'm echoing. So that will be immediately following tonight's debate. It's ready to go. So be looking for that after the show tonight. Tomorrow, I will continue my research into this product of marijuana because we have a flat Earth debate. So I plan to just stay high from now until Thursday. When we talk about Egypt and archaeology. So Red's Rhetoric will be with us tomorrow, and Wonton or Wotan, depending on your pronunciation. I still haven't figured out how that works, but I will by tomorrow, I assure you. And then Thursday, we've got the Egyptologist, Dr. Maggie Bryson, will be here to talk about ancient Egypt. So with all that out of the way, we're going to go into it. I'm going to let Steve talk about the issue while I start snacking and getting ready to giggle.
Yeah, basically the issue is this. Should it be legal to get high as fuck? There you go. People know I don't smoke pot, but all cards on the table. I'm for legalization of it. I say, hey, go get high. I don't care. It's just something that I don't particularly enjoy. But, however, it is legal now in California. So again, all cards on the table. At some point, I might try it again. People can give me some recommendations. I actually advocated the other day somebody send me stuff, and then I realized you can't send pot over the mail. I don't think that's legal, so don't do that. But if somebody has some suggestions of what to try, I'll give it a shot. But anyways, we have 3 awesome people in here. We got SJ, we got Brandon, and we got Frankie, and it is going to be 2-on-1 tonight. So unfortunately, I think we do have to recognize that we got to give SJ some time here. So she's brought a lot of stats, she's brought a lot of information. You guys have decided that because it is against, right now it is against law federally, you guys are arguing the pro position that it should be legalized. So you guys are going to go first, right? Is that right? Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So Frankie, why don't you lead us out? And remember, you got to kind of share your time with Brandon here. So you do your quick thing.
Well, I was going to let
Brandon
Brand do it.
You want Brandon to do the opening?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair
sure. I'll take
Brand
care
can
of that.
hit it.
Hit it, man.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, just a quick summary of some of the things we're going to be discussing here. As of right now, recreational use is legal in, I want to say 9 states: Alaska, Maine, Colorado, Massachusetts, California, Nevada, Vermont, Oregon, Washington. Also D.C. And furthermore, decriminalized in, I think, 13 states, plus the Virgin Islands. While that is progress, honestly, I don't believe, as I believe that Frankie and I will show, there's any reason for it to be illegal anywhere in the United States, let alone in the world. So with that said, I've kind of broken down a lot of my arguments into 4 major subjects, so to speak. First of all, being economic benefits to legalizing recreational marijuana. And, you know, some of the subtopics within that, I guess, would be along the lines of the cost of prohibition, as opposed to what we could be making taxing legal marijuana. Things also of the nature of the sheer amount of money that can be made off of this. Going furthermore into job creation. And the stats I have are all full-time positions that come with benefits. Those are the best kind, right? Also health benefits.
I'll sign up.
Exactly, I know, right? Going into health benefits. We've seen studies that show remarkable improvements in a variety of symptoms and conditions in nausea, epilepsy, glaucoma, cancer, Alzheimer's, anxiety, pain treatment, pain relief, however you'd like to put that. The amount of overdoses we see in this country on opioids and studies that are now showing that at least in some cases, the marijuana can be used as a substitute. Going into societal benefits, the fact that, as we were talking about earlier, violent crime and property crimes have both decreased in Colorado, for example, right at the time of legalization on a recreational level. Given how, for example, it's even, and get this, you might be a little thrown off to hear this, but it's actually lessening teen use of marijuana, we're seeing. Going into the whole discussion about how this could affect the black market, how this could hurt specifically Mexican drug cartels where it hurts, right in the pocket. How you will see a drop in certain areas where this is legalized recreationally of other harmful substances. And also environmental benefits. First and foremost, I guess, you have to think about how deforestation and how this could help in that. And we can get into that here in a minute, but I think that it's pretty obvious that, at least in my viewpoint, that the positives far outweigh the negatives. And at least for me, that's why I'm making the argument that I will be today. So, yeah.
Awesome. SJ, your turn.
Oh, Oh, excellent. So it's really interesting because I think we're going to both make very similar arguments. So I also looked at some of those same factors. I looked at some economic reasons. I basically went into, let me just gather something in front of me. I went into some facts about marijuana itself. I looked at its impact on safety, its impact on society, and I also looked at its impact on health and workplace productivity. And I looked at the cases of increases that we've seen. Let me just point out a couple of quick facts. In 2009, individuals between 12 and 25 comprised 65% of all subject abuse or substance abuse treatment admissions. Daily use was reported by about half of them. We've also seen increases in the usage of marijuana since it was legalized in many states. So we've seen between 2001 and 2013, usage went from 4.1 to 9.5% of the population, and addiction rates went from 1.5 to 2.9. Now, you could make an argument that some of this is based on what was reported, and so the reports might have been lower, obviously, in places where it was illegal early on. But that is something that's out there. They found that the poorer people are more likely to use pot. People who are less educated are more likely to use pot, and I've got some statistics on that. They've also found that economists think that if marijuana use is made legal, there's a potential of an increase of between 75 and 289%. So that's something that's going on. Some suggest that the drop in market prices for marijuana also could lead to an increase. And so I'll get into some more facts in just a second. But before I do that, I wanted to cite some of my sources because I think that's important, and I want to make sure that you think that I'm not just making this up. I pulled sources from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the Journal of Global Drug Policy and Practice. That actually provides a wealth of information and a ton of sources, and I can publish on Twitter or anywhere else the links to those two places. I also looked at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's information that they provided. Just an interesting little sidebar. I ran a little poll on Twitter and wanted to find out what people, and of course it's a convenient sample, it's not scientific, but I found out that of the atheists who responded to the poll, 89% supported recreational marijuana use, and 44% of Christians who responded reported support for that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, so there's a few other factors. Let me just name a couple of them that are interesting. Some of the social or societal factors are they found that there's a lower academic and career success. There's a greater likelihood of dropping out of school. It could deepen the divide between managerial and rank and file employees because there still is a social stigma associated with pot. People who are college educated are much less likely to use pot. It leads to poorer mental and physical health. Heavy pot users who are teens, who start as teens, actually have lost 8 points in IQ over because of limited negative impacts on brain development. So there's just a lot of things. I'm not going to start doing a Gish Gallop and naming all of these things, but there are different factors, and so I will chat about those. And as far as the economics of it, in that study that I cited from the journal, they actually found that with some of the increases that we would have as far as new people who would have to, who would become addicted and go into substance abuse and require that, the increases in those sorts of things would offset some of the increases in revenue and tax benefits if we did legalize it. So that's something that came out of that study. So I will turn it over to Frankie.
Real quick, before we get started, because I know where everybody else stands in this, and you don't have to answer, you don't have to incriminate yourself, but have you partaken of it before, Steph? You can take the fifth.
I want to admit that on
Okay,
okay, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm President Clinton. And when they asked him if he inhaled, he said he didn't. And so then when I was down in Belize, I saw T-shirts everywhere that said "Inhale to the Chief." I'm not going to pretend that. So at least
that's
Obama
Inhaling is the point.
Obama admitted that he inhaled, and I'll say that I'm like you, Steve. I did try it before in college. I don't like it. I don't like the type of buzz that you get.
It is funny there's a stigma still.
I don't like it at all.
I
Some
think
people
that's
don't.
thing to discuss why.
And let me say this before you go, Frankie. If you guys will, both of you, if you'll send me the links that you're going to use for this, so that I can put those in the description for when people are watching this. Later on, in case they want to check back, we'll have that as a reference point, and we'll do that. Okay, Frankie, you're up.
Yeah, I wanted to touch base real quick on the economic. How you said a lot more it seemed like it was more a negative economics, but I got a lot of stuff here that's is actually really a lot of positive, especially out of California and Colorado. The city of Oakland, California, collected 1.4 million in taxes from medical marijuana dispensaries. And again, I said this before when earlier that it's kind of hard to find polls that are just recreational and medical because they kind of lumped it in together. So a lot of this is medical, but it stands for recreational also. The state of Colorado collects $5 million in sales taxes from the marijuana business. Denver collected $3.4 million from sales taxes, applications, and license fees for it. For the dispensaries, Colorado Springs also collected more than 700,000 in taxes from the marijuana industry, and Oregon raised an estimate of a $6 million in taxes, which is used to pay for other state health programs. So basically, the last one is they're using this stuff that they're getting for taxes for marijuana to put back into the state, more like rehab programs for people who are addicted to opioids and stuff like that. And in 1996, California became the first to legalize medical marijuana. It is estimated that between 700 million and 1.3 billion worth of pot is being sold yearly, bringing the state's sales tax to between 58 million to 105 million. So there is a lot of economic growth there, and I seeing these numbers, I don't see, even if you're the Republican or a Democrat, I do not see why you would not want to legalize it regardless. It can help. It can put so much back into the states. It can go to schools and go to our roads, fixing our roads and stuff like that, and go to fixing up a lot of things that can that we need. Let me see a little bit real quick. Sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and turn over Brand while I look real quick, so I don't waste too much time.
Is Brand still with us?
Brand?
He might have. I
There
really.
he is.
There's,
Okay,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
back. Skype kicked me out and let me back in all by itself.
Did you have
How nice of
Did
it.
you have a point that you wanted to respond to real quick, SJ, that Frankie said before Brand jumps on that? I just don't
Yeah.
want to lose the train of thought there.
One of the primary offsets to the income that would be generated from tax benefit or tax revenues, as you had mentioned, one of the primary offsets of that is, as you mentioned, increases in the substance abuse needs and facilities. And so that is something, just to give you an idea, the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse said that it's estimated in 2005 that we spent $467.7 billion on substance abuse addiction, at all included in total with federal, state, and local governments. Less than 3% was spent on prevention, and more than 3/5 of that was due to healthcare costs. Now, that's not just marijuana. That's not only marijuana. That includes cigarettes, and it includes alcohol. And so these different types of addictions are also included. But that's just a point to note some of the numbers there. And another little fact that's pretty interesting is they found, and this is even going into the state of Colorado, an increase in the number of car crashes due to marijuana use and attributable to marijuana use by 3%. Now, they didn't find that those car crashes necessarily resulted in more fatalities in that particular study, but then in the other study that I saw, they said that there is a higher risk of fatalities for people smoking pot and driving in their cars. Obviously, it's not something that you want. It does stay in your system in a lot of cases. It stays in your system in a lot of cases between 24 and 48 hours. So if someone smokes pot, they might be going out on the road a day later and still having an impact on society in a negative way.
Well, I don't think anybody is actually going to kind of disagree with you with if you're high or anything, you should get behind the wheel of the car. So, but I'm going to go ahead and Brand talk, jump on the economic thing. Go ahead, Brand.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, as far as, if we're just looking at the economics, okay, let's look at it like this, and let's just open with a comparison. If I can bring this up really quick. Okay, here's
While he's bringing that up, I think that the crashes, SJ, probably had a lot to do with the fact that those who were smoking pot behind the wheel were just going too slow, and that's why you didn't see a correlation in the fatalities.
Who knows? Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, maybe that's true.
I mean,
just
the if it's economics we're touching on, here's just a broad way that I like to start this, and it's I believe let's see here, it was legalization is said to benefit the country by $8.7 billion. That's just in federal and state revenue annually, and that's just what's been generated. So take that how you will. However, one number that we already do know is what we are spending enforcing prohibition of marijuana alone. You had a lot of things lumped in when it came to substance abuse as far as the numbers there. This is strictly marijuana. The government currently spends $41.3 billion, if not more by now, since this information and study were released, simply enforcing prohibition. It seems, if we're going to look at it from an economic standpoint, you kind of have to start from there.
So let me mention that just to speak, because I also saw in the chat someone had mentioned something about jail time and that kind of thing. And what's interesting is I don't support putting people in jail for they're carrying around a small amount of pot that they're going to have for their own personal use. I definitely don't support incarceration for that. But they have found, I looked up some numbers, and offenders convicted of possession account only for 0.2% of people in federal prisons and 0.1% of people in state prisons. So it isn't a very large portion. And then they actually looked into those particular people, and they found that in most cases, actually, most of them were there because they actually had much more. They couldn't necessarily convict them beyond possession with intent to sell because they couldn't prove that. But they did have very large amounts of pot on them in those particular cases. So that just speaks to some of the incarceration sort of chatter. But that's a great point that you just made with respect to some of the, what did you say, $41 billion that's been generated in $41 billion, did you say, that actually we would save if we didn't have to enforce going after people like Mexican cartels?
I have a quick question.
41.3 billion.
Okay.
Say you're not against criminalization of it. How is that not advocating at least for the legalization of it? Or what do you expect? Or you're advocating that if somebody is a recreational pot user, they shouldn't be put in jail. But what is the criminal things that should happen to them? If it's not legal, then what is the ramifications?
I think
about small amounts.
I think fining
Right,
them
for a
for
small
small
amount,
amounts. I don't think you should put them in prison for that at all. I think maybe fining them.
Okay,
We
so
can set up
it's still criminal. You still want to maintain it's illegal, but have a fine for it rather than incarceration.
Yes.
I do want to point out real quick this, and again, I got a lot of stuff that's going back to Colorado, but according to the Uniform Crime Reporting data for Denver, there has been a 10.1% decrease in overall crime from this time last year, and a 5.2% drop in violent crime since they have legalized it recreationally. So that kind of goes with what you were talking about. If we legalize it, then it takes it out of the people who are trying to sell it under the black market and stuff like that, and decreases a lot of some of the drug related crimes around marijuana and stuff like that, like people getting shot up because they're trying to steal the weed or something like that. So that's definitely another thing I wanted to kind of point out.
That's a good point. I actually saw a study, and it's in these studies that I've referenced here that I'll include the links to, but there was a study in California where there was an increase in crime in people trying to break into some of these places, these dispensaries. So that was an issue that they found in California in a study that I saw.
Okay.
So I would think that legalizing pot would lead to an increase in people breaking into like 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
For munchies or something, but
Taco Bell.
yeah, Taco Bell break-in.
In the unlikely event they're closed.
Late night munchies.
Yeah,
I think-
exactly.
I think Frankie's point was or that he was saying that you're taking it out of the hands of like people like gang members and just bad characters in general. Because let's be honest, people who want to smoke pot are going to smoke pot, one way or the other. The fact that it's illegal isn't slowing that down any. But wouldn't you rather have it like out of those people's hands and into the hands of professionals and those that at least you're getting some kind of revenue off of it?
It's what I fear is the increase in people. We've seen already. They've, as I mentioned before, we went from, actually I didn't mention this, in 2010 the increase in users went from 14.4 million users to 17.4 in 2010. So we've got, over a 3-year period, we've basically got about 1 million people increasing in use per year. And that kind of thing is what concerns me. And it concerns me, and I'll be completely honest, what my really big issue is, and the whole reason why I'm even sitting here on this show, is because I have 2 sons, and one's 12 and one's 13, and I do not want them getting access to pot very easily. Not that I can prevent them from getting pot, but I don't want them getting access because they've shown, as I mentioned, long-term brain impacts that can reduce their IQ for kids who smoke, when they're in their teens. And so if my kids were somehow able to get that, and I know that's selfish, and I know some people say that's awful, I'm thinking that way, but I think about kids, and it just concerns me. And so that's the thing. They've shown that it will increase, and I know that it's going to hurt kids who do it. So
you can't.
I've got some good news. I've got some good news if that's your concern, especially given the age range. So Colorado teens between 12 and 17 years old actually reported a nearly 12% drop in marijuana use just 2 years after adult recreational use was legalized. And this is according to a national survey on drug use and health. So there's actually a decline in these areas, specifically in between the ages of 12 and 17, by about 12% after recreational legalization. So that's actually some good news, right?
And also, are you talking about there's an increase in marijuana usage? If it's legal recreationally, there's going to be an increase in it. So that's I don't know if that's really a good way to use it. But like if it's recreationally and people can get it, there's going to be an increase. So that study is kind of, I don't know if it's really kind of correct way of putting it, but it's if it's legal recreationally, there is going to be an increase in marijuana usage.
Well, let me I'll bring up a couple of other things just to piggyback on that. If we talk about sheer numbers, that's one thing, but we could also talk about productivity in the workplace. And one of the neat things about the United States is we have a very good work ethic. We're very productive. We've got a GDP, even though we have only about 324 million people, our GDP is almost equivalent to that of China, and China has about 1.3 billion people, and it's almost it's around equivalent to the entire European Union, which has 1.6 times our population. So that's pretty significant. We've got a really good productivity right now. But what they found is they said that when people did some tests, they found that industrial accidents in the workplace were 55% more likely to happen when people were tested for marijuana in their bloodstream, and in accidents, there were 85% more injuries compared with those who tested negative for people who tested for having marijuana in their bloodstream, which they estimate was between 24 and 48 hours before they were tested. So that's an interesting thing. And then there's, besides the productivity issue, which does concern me because they have shown that people's motivation goes down a little bit, but there's a lot of health impacts that are quite negative, and so that's another concern. Did you want to speak to any of those health issues? Now, I know you mentioned some that you thought were positive, but we've seen things like poor mental and physical health, breathing problems, pregnancy of people. We don't want people to use this when they're pregnant because it could lead to birth defects, because that's a big problem, obviously. THC can be transmitted also through breast milk, so that's another issue. it can lead to addiction. It's been shown to link with strokes, infertility, testicular cancer, and immune system damage. People have poor mental and physical health. They're more likely to be depressed and have impaired memory when they're using it. And then, of course, if in really bad cases, it can lead to delusions, hallucinations, psychosis, paranoia, and worsening schizophrenia. So I think if we just look at the health itself and looking at what we'd like to do for the greater good of society, I think that we should not open this big, huge can of worms and allow all these people to get access to this stuff that's actually going to hurt them.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that, because I actually have a slight interest in this, especially with younger children who are epileptic. There's CBD and a childhood epilepsy. There's a growing interest in marijuana, chemical CBD, to treat certain conditions such as childhood epilepsy, a disorder that causes a child to have violent seizures. I have seen multiple videos of these kids that are shaking so violently, like they can't get them to stop no matter what. A little bit of the CBD oil, and it just kind of and the seizure stops. So some of those, I think, and I don't have them right here with me, but I think some of those that you had said was actually kind of proven false later in life. If you don't mind sending me that, because I want to kind of see that real quick. You can send it to me on Twitter.
I will, no problem. I've got people on the chat saying I'm making this up. I'll send links. I'm not making it up. I've got the links to all the studies, and I mentioned before I've got the NIH, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the Journal of Global Drug Policy and Practice, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration. So I have sources.
Yeah,
that
I don't think you're making it up. I just think the sources might be a little bit misleading. But also, the scientists are also conducting preclinical and clinical trials with marijuana, and and its extracts to treat symptoms of illness and other conditions such as diseases that affect the immune system, including HIV and AIDS, multiple sclerosis, which is a gradual loss of muscle control, inflammation, pain, seizures, substance use disorders, mental disorders. There's a lot that it can help. I'm not exactly sure on its not 100% sure on its use on cancer. If it can, I've always heard that it can help, suppress cancer or not. But I'm not going to be not saying that. Take that with a grain of salt. I haven't seen studies on it. Let me roll up, because I got actually on here about this. Is actually on drugabuse.gov that I just pulled this off of. It also, medical marijuana legalization can decrease prescription opioid problems by getting them off of these pain pills that are, one, killing a lot of people. Two, a lot of people are highly addicted to it. And the cannabis can actually, do the same things that these some of these opiates can do, but lesser side effects that, and less harmful. Let me see real quick. Additionally, one native-founded study suggests a link between medical marijuana legalization and fewer overdose deaths from prescription opioids. These studies, however, are population-based and can't show that medical marijuana legalization caused a decrease in deaths or that patients changed their drug-taking behavior. So there's definitely a whole lot more, and I'm going to look a little bit. I'm going to let Brand kind of go into it, because I know he might have it pulled up.
Can I say something real quick on that? Because I'm completely behind you on that. I think these kids who have epilepsy should have every right, or the parents should have every right to help them out for their seizures. And I think that anyone who has cancer, who has AIDS or anything like that, those are the kinds of things that people have legitimate reasons to use marijuana, or in whatever form that they take it. I'm behind you 100% on that. So, and I actually am. As far as hitting close to home, I'm very familiar with people whom I know very closely who are on prescription opioids. These people are in such extreme pain that medical marijuana would actually help them. They don't want to make that switch because of the stigma, but medical marijuana, the doctors are telling them, please, you could actually eliminate your pain and the sorts of issues that you're going through if you would just switch. Now, in those cases, I am behind these people. If they need to get medical marijuana to help themselves out, more power to them. Do it.
Well, there's a lot of people like myself who don't have insurance. but I know I suffer from severe depression due to a lot of stuff that has happened in my life and here. But I don't have the means or the way to pay in these medical places for just to say, hey, I got a medical card. So if I can get it recreationally to help my depression, then there's not really a harm in that. Like I said, it's the people who don't have insurance can't get the stuff that they need to help. So if they can get it from a recreational place, then they'll be able to help some of the stuff they have.
So that's a good point. Do you happen to, because I have no idea what it would cost to get a card to be able to buy marijuana. Does anyone know what that would cost?
I'm not exactly sure, actually. Someone in the chat probably knows.
Well worth it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could be, like you're saying, it could be prohibitive to people in your particular situation. So
he means like he's not talking about like a medical marijuana card. He's talking about like an insurance card to get like to go see a doctor, and he's basically going to self-medication. You know, instead of having to pay what the copay is and everything that you would have to in the medical industry, he's taking the route of self-medicating and handling it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the expenses is out of pocket is when you actually try to go to a doctor, I would assume, to get a script so you can then go to the dispensary and get something, right? Not so much get the medical card. Is that what it is? Or is it the medical card itself is the prohibitive, the thing that's costly?
From what Wake Up Dead said, it's $250 in Ohio for a medical card. So
$250 is that because there's also, I don't know what health insurance runs for males your age. I don't even know how old you are, but I don't know what health insurance runs. But I can say that I understand why a lot of people aren't on health insurance. The Affordable Care Act actually has some pretty good deals on health insurance that I have close members in my extended family who are using, and that might be something you might consider if you haven't done that yet.
And they're saying that the insurance will pay for the medical card, it seems.
So what's the alternative in that situation, like Frank has just proposed? It's not a stretch to say he's not the only one in that scenario. So what's the alternative at this point in an area where we are? Because if the alternative then becomes to purchase it on the street, and you really have no idea in a lot of cases of knowing what you could be ingesting, don't you think it makes it a little bit more dangerous that way when it could be covered in mold or fungus or pesticides
fentanyl.
Or fentanyl? I mean, if it's able to be legalized and available for someone in his situation, then the government's going to be able to enforce laboratory testing and regulations to make sure there's none of this going on. Washington, for example, has a law that requires health warnings, quality assurance, labeling for the concentration of THC, and various other important regulations for consumers. And this all comes out of Marijuana Policy Group. It's estimated about 90% of the marijuana market in Colorado will be supplied by licensed and taxed vendors. And that kind of begins to demonstrate that the black market can be replaced by an actual legal, recreationally regulated sales.
Yeah, so those are some good points, and so there's definitely some revenue that's coming in. The studies that I was referencing, they said that they estimated that it could generate around $8.7 billion in government revenue, but they did say that the increases in treatments and addictions and crime, according to that, could actually offset that. And so that was something that they pointed out. I did want to point out, I agree with you as far as getting pot on the street. There's a huge fear that could be laced with a lot of different things besides the pesticides and everything you mentioned. So that's a fear, and that's definitely something that's notable. And so that's an issue. One thing I did find though, marijuana smoke has ammonia levels 20 times higher than tobacco. Kind of interesting. So smoking it really is pretty dangerous. In fact, it says if you smoke marijuana, you're about 20 years ahead of tobacco smokers on your rapid lung destruction. So that was something that also came out in these studies.
I think
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I think you guys were using a different, well, actually, no, not Brandon, but Brandon, I think, but I think, Frank, didn't you say something about these cake pops or something like that?
Yeah, I think I remember you. I don't know if this is the same thing that you had linked me to, but or that was on Twitter, but I also wanted to say that any smoke is not going to be good for your lungs. Cigarette smoke, pot smoke, smoke from, when you're burning wood or smoking a, nice big, pork butt or something like that. Any smoke's not going to be good for your lungs. But yeah, but it's, but there is many different ways that you can actually take it. I've actually pulled it up from one of my favorite sites, Leafly. 6 ways to enjoy cannabis without having to smoke it. One of them, of course, is cake pops. I got right here, so which I'll probably be chowing down on some in a bit. But you can also vape it, which I'm actually getting that too pretty soon. You don't need a torch to cannabis. You can actually just put it in one of these things right here, which is just a vape pen. Put it in and have fun. There's also ingestible oils where they get the oils from these from the cannabis and put it into little pill forms, and you can take it that way, which is a lot of people who
Gummy bears,
yeah, which a lot of people, for kids who have epileptic seizures, that's what they use. A lot of people make tinctures from it, which is infusing liquids that extract cannabis compounds using alcohol soak and are applied directly under the tongue. That might be a little bit also. And topicals, they have topicals where if you're sore, like you worked out really hard and you're sore, you can just put it on sore areas and it helps. And also the last one it says is dabbing, which is the method of flash vaporizing in which cannabis concentrates are dropped in a heated water pipe attached and inhaled for intensely potent effects. So there's a lot of ways you can take it without just having to smoke.
We've got around the smoking issue, SJ. What say you now?
I just wanted to point out, as far as the way that people do take it, I think it'd be safer probably to take it in food than it would be taking it as in vaping or some of these other forms, because it's my understanding that there's higher levels of THC in some of these different forms, to the point where that some people have had to go to the emergency room to be treated. So that's an issue.
Not exactly true, because I have gotten higher, way much higher, by eating half of a cake pop than I have ever kind of smoked it. And most of the times when these people go to the emergency rooms, they're not really like, oh my God, I'm about to overdose. They're having a panic attack, pretty much. They talk themselves up like, oh shit, I'm about to die. When really all they have to do,
done that.
When really all to do, if you can't talk yourself down from it, get you a cup of coffee, drink something, and you'll be able to get yourself down of it, or just write it. So
that's a good point, because how do you deal with the fact that there are increases in suicidal thoughts from marijuana, and then obviously if you have those thoughts, someone might act on them? What do we do about that?
I don't know anybody who has smoked marijuana and wanted to kill themselves. Most of the time, if they smoke marijuana, they kind of just sit back and watch, funny movies. So I've never seen any correlation with smoking pot and suicide. I see more of it in antidepressants and opioids and stuff like that, but I've never seen it in pot.
They have shown it in those studies that I'm referencing. They did show that suicidal thoughts have increased. So there is a pretty significant increase in suicidal thoughts among some people between users and non-users. So it's just something, I know if you didn't see it, it's like one of those things. I actually don't know anybody either who uses pot who has suicidal thoughts, as far as I know. I don't. I mean, I could be anecdotal too, but the studies have indicated that there are people like that. And so
then they
and it's also,
was there an increase in suicides though, or was that just suicidal thoughts? Was there an actual correlation between actual suicides with that, or it was just the thought aspect of it?
That's a good point. I couldn't find any information on suicide, like direct knowledge of people who were using in the suicide. I couldn't find that.
Well, I mean, a good test thing would be like
I've
Colorado.
had some of those thoughts when I've been way too high. I mean, I've had some. Oh my gosh, take me out of this now. So
I don't want to be
probably
like
one of
this.
those.
But Colorado's been legal for a while. Has there been any uptick in the amount of suicides from that state since the legalization, or is it pretty flat? Does anybody know?
I don't.
We'll have to look into that, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's an important distinction to be made that Kyle made. Having an increase in potential suicidal thoughts does not necessarily translate to actually people committing suicide.
We certainly
people might
hope
just say,
not.
you know what, I'm feeling suicidal, let's go have some Cheetos.
Yeah, no, we hope not. You definitely hope not.
And I mean, if they having a really suicidal thoughts, then there's something more deeper there that they need help with, and so I don't think there's any correlation with weed and suicidal thoughts. So, but can you?
Do you guys have any number?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask. Do any of you guys have any figures in terms of? I think the interesting aspect for me, anyway, is the punishment phase of it. Like how many people are in prison now? Let's say that if you're in California, they went to prison for lengthy sentences, are still there now, serving sentences for getting, possession with intent to distribute, even though that drug is now legal in the state. Do you have any? Do you guys ever run any across of any numbers like that? Like, what is that actually doing to those kind of populations? Because I'm sure there are still cases where people have gotten lengthy sentences and they're in California still in prison, even though the thing they were charged with originally is no longer an illegal substance. So I think that would be an interesting point. I don't know if you guys come
all
across
I found was that I found that statistic that I cited earlier, where it was 0.2% of people who are in federal prisons are in there for possession itself, and 0.1% are in state prisons for possession. So that was what I found. But you have a great point. I would be curious to find out or to get the stats on how many people are still in those prisons in these states where it's legal, who just haven't been able to get out of the bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah. Okay, Brand, you haven't spoke here recently. You got a point you want to throw out there?
Brandon, are you there?
I think he's reading.
We're going to about an hour in. So if you
hates me
got some
tonight,
questions
guys.
in the live chat, start.
He can't hear us.
Can't hear us?
No, I don't think he can hear us.
Sign language.
Can you hear?
Hello.
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
A, B.
That must be some good shit you're smoking.
About
It's a
hour mark.
big
Okay,
match.
so
Brandon checked out here. Is he still with us?
I have a question for all of you guys. This goes to all three of you, and I'm gonna start with SJ, but it's to all three of you. I don't want you to think that I'm singling you out, SJ, but alcohol, right? I think we can agree that alcohol is way worse for people than marijuana could ever, even dream to be. So where do you stand on how can we be so blatantly, the H word is escaping me right now. Hypocritical. Yeah, hypocritical. How can we be so blatantly hypocritical in the face of that when we know that, the number one cause of automobile accidents, drunk driving? You never hear of anybody, like I said earlier, if somebody gets into a wreck when they're high on marijuana, it's because they were going too slow and they bumped a guardrail or something like that, probably. But what's your stance on that with alcohol?
Well, I'm totally fine with. I know I do sound like a hypocrite because I'm fine with alcohol. I think and they've shown that red wine has positive health impacts, and so
it does
in moderation. So drinking alcohol in moderation has had positive impacts on the heart. It's had positive impacts on stress levels and different things like that. So I have no problem with alcohol, which I know it sounds you probably don't like that. And my kids, what's going to happen? I'm going to have to watch them because I would rather they not drink drink either until they're 21. But I'll be honest, when I was younger, my parents were pretty liberal, and they said, we're not going to limit you. I mean, this sounds, they said something like that. So when I went off to college, they didn't want me to just go rage like a lot of my friends did whose parents were very, very strict with them. So I'll deal with that when the time comes. But
I do think
let me tell you this. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would, just a little thing about me, I would much rather drink red wine than, I prefer that to marijuana. Absolutely. I love wine. I mean, I'm a wine fanatic, but the numbers game is just way worse with alcohol. So I mean, that's got to be kind of a point of I think contention there. When I know you, like I said, you enjoy it, as do I. If I had to take my choosing, I would take the wine. But when it comes to like harming people, alcohol is a way bigger monster than marijuana could ever be.
Yeah,
I think we need to differentiate here between societal factors and individual factors, because you can apply the same arguments for tobacco as well, right? Tobacco doesn't really harm society, and you get into the insurance things, fine, fair enough. But for as a whole, if somebody's smoking tobacco, then it is harming them. I quit smoking almost 2.5 years ago or so, but I smoked for 25 plus years. But that was an individual thing. But Kyle brings up the point about alcohol.
Secondhand.
Yeah, alcohol. Well, and of course, secondhand smoke. But alcohol is a societal factor because it does contribute a lot into accidents. It has very detrimental effects in society. However, there are positive individual effects. Red wine is, in moderation, is good for you. And I think alcohol in general, in moderation, is fine. But you have to separate these types of things. And if you're going to advocate for the criminalization or illegality of marijuana, don't you think you kind of have to first establish where it falls in the line in relationship to things like alcohol and tobacco? I mean, if it's not even worse than those two, then do you not have a weaker stance than if you can demonstrate that they are worse, both society and to the oneself? Because you had indicated this is for your kids, and I respect that. I don't want my daughter to smoke. I don't want her to drink either, but if she chooses to. But it's just, it is legal right now to smoke, and it is legal to drink. And do you think that the legalization of marijuana is worse than either of those two? I think that's a better framed question, if I can ask it that way.
I guess I haven't seen studies that indicate that aside from helping people who have chronic pain and cancer and those kind of things, for the normal healthy person, I have yet to find a study that indicates that marijuana has any sort of positive health impacts. So I haven't seen them. I mean, you can, if you want to show them to me, that'd be great. I've actually shown that it leads to more depression, for example, Frankie. I've shown that it leads to bigger problems and positive. It positively impacts mental illnesses.
I want to.
Oh, I'm not. Tobacco, I think, and I used to smoke when I was in college. Tobacco. So I quit cold turkey many years ago. So I don't think tobacco doesn't do anything good for society. I see no benefit in tobacco, but it's been around for thousands of years. So.
And I may seem like more of a hypocrite because when we do our private Patreon shows, we do drink a little bit, but it's more of just because we act goofy. But I see more good in marijuana than I do have ever seen in alcohol, for the sheer fact. Now, just two instances. One of my good friends from high school was hit by a drunk driver. The guy got off scot-free. I don't know how he done it, but he got off scot-free. I'm not going to really name him out, but a family member who was really close to me was an alcoholic. There's been nights where he would hit his wife, and I would have to pull a knife from his hands because he was trying to kill himself when he's drunk. But when he's high, all we did was chase cars. That's not really safe. But,
I've had a few friends like that. It does influence people differently. Yes, I've had friends.
Let me tell you what's worse than
them than marijuana has.
Yeah.
What's worse than marijuana, in my opinion, is like stuff like Coke, and I think sugar is more harmful than marijuana ultimately, because you can get, there are more degenerative diseases associated with sugar than you could pin, I think, on marijuana. So I think that to say that it doesn't give you any positive benefits, like gum doesn't give you any positive benefits either, but there's nothing wrong with chewing gum. There are things out there that don't have any kind of positive influence, but when you have something that's such a a staple to the negative consequence. Now, if you're able to drink and socialize and not have any issues, then that's great. I don't see anything wrong with drinking at all. But those cases where it goes really bad, I mean, just like really bad, where it be driving or abuse or cirrhosis of the liver, just those kind of things, you don't see any correlation like that with marijuana. I mean, you don't see that. It doesn't happen.
And I actually have some more good news. So interestingly enough, research is now indicating that people drink less and alcohol sales drop in places where marijuana is legalized recreationally. Also, another in the same research, it also says, interestingly enough, the amount of crime and violence caused by alcohol use is 10 times higher than by marijuana use, and alcohol is a factor in around 40% of violent crimes.
Well, I want to combine the statistics that you guys both brought up, because SJ made a good point, and Brand, you made a good point, and I called it to combine the two, actually, and I think that it kind of paints all of this in a really clear picture when you do that. Actually, you said that there were millions that had reported increase in use, right? And then Brand, you reported that the crime rate continues steadily nationwide to decline. So, although there is a major increase in use, there is still a decrease in criminal activity. So, I'm not saying that they're correlated, but you're not going the opposite way. You know what I mean? Like, you're not, just because there's an increase in marijuana use, you don't see the crime rates go up. Where they might not be correlated, they're still, going down. So I think maybe that's a positive thing to take away from that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the study that indicates that crime rates have gone down in the states where recreational marijuana is allowed. I would love to see that, because I saw a different study, and I'm looking at it right here. In fact, can I read just a little bit to you from this study, what they concluded?
Sure.
So legalization will not only have devastating consequences for health, crime, and productivity, it is a waste of taxpayer dollars that could much more wisely be spent on more effective deficit-reducing measures. Likewise, if the public buys marijuana, this diverts funds from the national economy that are available for more productive purposes like education, research, and prevention. Even if tobacco use has so far been shown to cause more health harms than marijuana, it does not follow that legalization is a justifiable policy shift in light of its harms. Tobacco causes more harm because more people use it. So that's just a little study, and it's this particular study is from David Evans, and it's from it's called the Economic Impacts of Marijuana Legalization, and again, that's in the Journal of Global Drug Policy and Practice, and it has quite a few references. So something I would recommend.
Let me ask, do you think there's any kind of I'm not insinuating this, I'm just asking in general, but do you think that some of these studies may have been biased in some ways to try to find the outcome, at least that they're going for? And I'm not saying your studies are doing that. We're going to put all the studies in after the video is rendered. Okay, so people have been asking, are these studies going to be available? Yes, anybody that has these links, SJ and Frankie and Brandon, throw us these links, and we're going to compile them. It's not going to happen right away, but we will compile them, and eventually they'll be in this video. So check back later on, and even come back tomorrow, rewatch the video again, and look at the links. But do you think that the sources do contribute to the evaluation of studies? Because I have personally found that studies can be used in multiple different ways, and and I'm not saying that ruins the efficacy of the study, but not all studies are equal. And so, do you think that there is possible bias in certain studies that do tend to want to favor one particular outcome over another?
And
yes, let me speak to that. I actually know that they have shown studies where, for example, coffee manufacturers might fund studies that would show the health benefits of coffee, or you have chocolate manufacturers showing the health benefits of chocolate. That's another big one. How about even a really big one is, how about all of the people who are trying to fund on studies that are claiming that we're not having global warming issues right now? So there's a very large contingent of scientists who are basically trying to say that what's going on right now with our increases in population and greenhouse gases has nothing to do with or is not contributing to sea level rise, which is completely absurd because the science has shown it has. So.
Hey, we found something we agree on.
Yeah. Matter of fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but the chocolate thing is actually a legit thing. I think Hershey was accused of actually contributing to some of the major studies for the benefits of chocolate, right?
Exactly.
I think my
Sugar.
cake pop has some Hershey's into it.
And sugar. That's to me.
sugar.
That's
I really want something sweet right now. But you're talking about alcohol because somebody mentioned you need sugar to make alcohol.
I say this as I
really
eat
want
a
something
chocolate
sweet
bar.
right now. Yeah, I got the munchies. Like you wouldn't believe.
We're all being
the only one that's
hypocrites
not high
tonight.
right now other than history, I guess, right?
Now I haven't seen. Kyle, I was looking. What's all that food you said you had at Costco? Because I haven't seen you eat any of it.
I brought up a bunch
She's
of
like,
stuff
wait a
for
minute.
Fox mainly. I don't.
Oh, he's eating now.
Yeah, I did have a bite of chocolate. You would ask me whenever I did take a bite. See, I have candy bars right here because whenever I'm working or like cutting a video, doing the graphics for this, I like to snack. I'll just grab one or whatever. But that's not a good idea because during the show they're literally right here in my face. And so it's like a staring competition that I have every show with whatever candy bar it is, because I want it right then, and I know I can't because any minute you got to be ready to jump in. And so the one time that I think that I'm okay to take the bite, I get.
Damn it, Kyle!
Damn it, Kyle! You have one job.
Is ultimately I think that sugar's worse than any of them, and I used to be close to 300 pounds. I mean, I was a big guy. I mean, I was overweight, like really bad. Could hardly walk up 3 flights of stairs, and I tried like every single diet out there known to man, and I just could not lose any weight. And I saw a documentary called Fed Up on
I've seen that.
actually YouTube. Yeah, and it goes into kind of like the lobbying firms that food companies have and how they pay for these studies. The Food and Drug Administration back in the 70s when the whole craze with fat was, fat's the devil and fat's the enemy. So all these food companies went to fat-free stuff, which means that you have to increase sugar in that and for the flavor. And I found that after I watched that and I cut sugar out, like I didn't drink any sodas, I didn't have like dessert, stuff like that. It melted away and I felt better than I, had ever. And the culprit was sugar. And getting over that initial fasting part from when you're not around sugar. I know this is a big rant about sugar, but I think it's important for people out there who are, especially you guys who are high, because I know you're out there and you are going to be the ones reaching for the candy bar. So this is a PSA.
I'm going to actually tell you something.
I lost 20 pounds the same way, by the way. I really did cut down sugars. I got rid of Pepsi and high fructose corn syrup. I even cut down on carbohydrates because those are complex sugars. And I increased more my lean proteins and everything. I lost 20 pounds. Just in the last couple of weeks, I got to tell you, when I went shopping, I said, screw it. I lost 20 pounds. I'm going to celebrate a little bit. So I bought some carrot cake. I bought some cookies. I bought some breads. 2 weeks later, I put down 4 pounds. So
Bad, Steve.
I'm telling you, I think the cow is absolutely right. I think that sugar has a huge effect on that.
I agree with you. I actually quit when I was 23. The last car accident I was in happened when I was 23, and when I was always doing these crazy diets. I was very skinny back then, and I did these crazy diets where I'd wake up in the morning and have a donut, and that's all I'd eat all day. And what happened was my blood sugar started getting really out of whack, and I got in a car accident and totaled my car by wrapping it around a telephone pole, and ended up getting my family kicked off of our insurance policy because it was so bad. But it was because of the sugar. So right after that, I knew something was going on with the sugar. I haven't really, I've barely eaten dessert since then, barely. And I think it's actually really helped me in a lot of ways, health-wise.
I think I think it's important to note that that donut that caused that car accident has done more damage than somebody who is high and driving. Just want to put that out there.
I do like donuts, but I think sugary drinks are probably the leading causes of so many problems. I do advocate. Don't.
I should say
drink Pepsi if you want to, but don't. I knew people literally that drank Pepsi 24/7. That's the only thing they drank, and it affected them in ways you couldn't believe. It just they look like
It'll kill you.
Hell warmed over.
SJ, I know that you have that you're pressed for time, so I do want to see if there's anybody out there that has any questions before we wrap up.
And SJ, I want to make sure this, because obviously the four of us are for legalization, so I don't want you to feel like you're outnumbered, and people have been asking about that. So I want JSJ to, from her own voice, say, or if she feels like she's being outnumbered here at all.
No, I don't. Okay. I don't. You have to realize
I didn't get that impression either.
I was in my. I told you in the classroom. I mentioned this whole thing, and I found out that the vast majority of my students, if not all of them, I don't know, but they seem to be behind legalization too. I think that's just a trend that younger people are pretty much behind it more. So I'm always outnumbered. So I am fine with that, and I still appreciate coming on your show. You guys are so pleasant. I'm going to highly recommend you. I've been highly recommending you to all of my friends. So you just do a really good job.
She battles 16,000 angry Twitter people every day. The best people that she could come into a discussion with are for people who are pro legalization of marijuana. Because we're
just probably easy going.
Whatever, man. Just do you, SJ. Do you?
That's just like your opinion, man.
When you guys said that half of you are going to be smoking pot, I thought, sweet, I've got somewhat of an advantage. But I don't think I got that advantage because you guys still articulated your points very well.
We are
not as that is what right? You need to take away from this. Look, we got out of a marijuana debate a really important message about the importance of staying away from too many amounts of sugar and taking care of yourself. Now, tell me what religion debate you can get that message out of. It usually ends in, screw it, I'm out of here.
But there's something to be said by characterizations of people. I mean, obviously, when you look at people like Brandon and Frankie, you could kind of tell they probably do partake. I mean, but people have that stigma. But I mean, both of them came out of the gate. I mean, especially Brandon came right out of the gate with, okay, let me tell you about this. Frankie backed up with other stuff. They're very articulate. They're very educated. They're very intelligent. And that's why I don't think you could just look at somebody and go, they're a pot smoker. They got to be dumb shits and they got to have brain fried kind of people. That doesn't always apply.
That's after we start smoking or eating. So I don't know. The cake pop's starting to kick in. So I'm not.
Yeah, once the cake pop, then you become that archetype of the dude. I'm so big.
Holy fuck! I did want to say real quick.
Jesus.
Yeah, SJ, I did tag you in two things that Casey Atheist had showed me about marijuana and crime rate and stuff like that. So
let's get some questions here. I can't open Discord right now. Sorry. So somebody sent these.
What does G-Man say about pot?
Does he have an official stance?
You know what? I tell you what. I would recommend legalization of pot just so he can smoke it anytime he feels like it because he needs to.
He'd be a lot happier if he did.
He'd be a lot happier. I agree. All right, so Brian Stevens, my buddy Brian, his question is, social media has been shown to strongly increase suicidal thoughts among teens. Should we make social media illegal or restrict it in any way?
Oh, that's actually an excellent question. There's a video by Simon Sinek, and it's on millennials, and it talks about how people who use social media, every time they see those little pings where they have notifications, dopamine levels go up. And he talks about the negative impacts of social media. But they're actually, I think it's a release for a lot of people. So I don't see it as a negative. Unfortunately, I use it too much, just like you guys might use it a little too much too, or maybe you don't think so.
I use it optimally for what I need it for, because this is what I do. I mean, for me, it is optimal that I spend as much time on the internet that I do because I've got so many different platforms that I have to attend to.
Is this what you do for a living, Steve?
I think
This is my full.
I think it depends on which side of the coin you are on that, though, to whether or not it's a positive or a benefit. If you're somebody that has a lot of interaction and the pings that you were talking about, then I think, it's great. But for those who sit there and wait, on the notification, you know what I mean? Like those that don't have a big following, that kind of feel left out, I think that's definitely to their detriment. You shouldn't be sitting around waiting for your life to be lived vicariously through an online platform. If you're using it to do general socializing, that's one thing, but to have your entire life be invested in an online platform, I think that's a lot. It has a lot to do with why there are such high rates of depression and things like that.
Yeah, I think
No
I think when you attach your self-esteem to that, right? When I see, especially teens will attach their self-esteem to how many likes they get on their Instagram.
Everyone does.
Problematic. I don't think everybody does. I think that there's an intrinsic value to say, okay, I'm doing something. This is my feedback that I'm getting on it. But I don't think that everybody necessarily attaches their self-worth to it. That's a different.
I think you'd be surprised.
But I mean, isn't it kind of the same thing that's always existed? At least, I mean, modern times is how many friends one has, popularity. I mean, those things have always really existed. I think it's just it's on a new platform now. It's the next evolution, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, you're having to watch everybody else's go around. I think is the thing. You have
more
to sit
widespread
there and,
view. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to watch maybe somebody that you're friends with who is getting, a lot of likes, and you're not. They're just it's got overwhelming positive benefits. That no question to that. But I think to a certain amount of people, it does a lot to their detriment. I would think you can't win either way.
I think if people use it, I think if it's what you guys said, what people are using it to do. If they're using it to try to spread some sort of positivity and, to enhance friendships and to build friendships and relationships, I think that's a good thing. But I think when people use it to abuse other people or they act as cyber bullies, well, that's completely different. And unfortunately, I think the cyberbullying is what leads people to depression. And I've seen my kids get online with other kids, and I've seen them. I look at their Discord runs. Sometimes I go in there and read what's going on, and I see bullying between these kids. There's 20 of them on a Discord, and some of them are saying really mean things to each other, and so that make my kids get off then. But that's the kind of thing that I think really can hurt people, especially if they don't have a good self-esteem or any sort of backing. You ever
heard of an incel?
Oh my fucking god!
Incel?
Yeah, they're the most vicious of the vicious. But before we talk about incels real quick, I wanted to throw this out there. To what Brandon said, there's actually this thing called Dunbar's number, which is effectively the most amount of connections you can have with people and maintain stable, healthy, cohesive relationships. And it varies between about 100 and a couple hundred, but I think the average is like 150. But that, I think what we're seeing it now is because of social media, people are vastly now increasing that number. I think back in older days, most people didn't have 100, 200 friends in their social circles, right? Now we have trying to maintain groups of thousands. And I don't think it's tentatively even or physically even possible to have that many stable type relationships when you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Now we all try. We have hundreds and hundreds of people we engage with, but I think it does spread you a little thin. Don't you think?
That's actually really interesting. I've never.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever even thought about it that way before. Honestly,
I would recommend that video by Simon Sinek because they have shown that you don't get those deep, meaningful relationships in social media that you do in real life.
Except for Kyle, we have a very deep, meaningful relationship.
I'm not into it like that though. I've never been into like. I will, correspond and kind of keep up. It has to increase obviously now because of what we do, here with the show. But on a personal level, I very rarely tweet from my personal account. I'm very rarely updating anything on my you could probably go to my Facebook profile now and it hasn't been updated since months ago. I've just never been into the never cared about who thought what about me. I think it has a lot to do with the way that I grew up, but I've just never played into that. I think it's funny to sit back on the outside and watch how other people, kind of respond to that. Because you have people that they literally can't function if they don't get some sort of attention. And I think that a lot of us here know quite a few of those people, just based on this.
And they don't. What's worse is they don't even care what type of attention that is. I mean, most of us like some positive attention. We want to be reinforced. We want to be listened to. There are people but they don't even take it as bad publicity, right? They're not even saying, "Oh, we have bad publicity, therefore we're going to get some publicity." Businesses use that approach sometimes as well. We're talking about people that thrive on negative attention, regardless, irrespective of anything else. they are getting attention, and they don't care how bad they look. And that, to me, doesn't make any sense, but that is their mindset, right? So,
hey, I've seen it.
We've all seen it.
Hey, can I say that real quick, just because she's in the chat, that Shannon Q handled those people like a boss.
Yeah, getting back to the incels,
No, I don't. I honestly don't. I don't want to go there yet.
Okay.
I think that.
Well, can I just say that Shannon Q took care of that situation?
Yeah,
very well, very effective.
I am working on something to have the person that made probably the dumbest comment that I've ever, honestly, probably the stupidest, most misogynistic, just flat out wrong comment that I've ever heard in my entire life. That I will not even give it any kind of dignity to even hint at what it was on this show. I will not in any way mention him because he's useless and worthless, and I think he needs to be held accountable for what he said. I think that if this person really did mean what he said and where he was coming from with it, then I invite him anytime to come on here and to discuss it with me about it, because I would love to understand that kind of thinking. And if I continue to hear crickets, then I'm just going to assume he's just like the 90% of online keyboard warriors who get behind the screen and can be as tough as nails until it comes time to answer for what they say. So if you believe what you said, bring it. We'll talk about it.
We'll definitely table that. Let's get back to the some questions here, because I know you got about 15 minutes left. I use Vegas has asked, and this is a good question, I think, to actually Brandon and Frankie. Do you guys know why cannabis was even made illegal to begin with? I mean, do you know what the story is, why it's illegal?
I'll let Brand answer that.
I've heard multiple different reasonings. I honestly, I mean, was there one specific?
Okay, we're gonna have to phone our friend Google.
The only thing I can think of is more of the.
I honestly have no idea.
Ronald Reagan years that's doing the more.
Oh, you think
maybe not
Ronald
Reagan, but whoever said the war on drugs. Yeah,
that was
whoever
Nixon.
started it.
That was Nixon.
That was Nixon, and it was. I think it was conceived from the get-go, the way they implemented it.
I think that's when it really kind of started, and I think that's when it was kind of made legalized, because then I think it was Nixon was war on drugs, and I think it was Reagan that said it was, or is his wife, one of the two said it was a gateway drug, so they kind of classified it in or something like that. Take it with a grain of salt. I just ate my cake pop, so I'm not exactly sure. But
the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937 effectively made possession or transfer of marijuana illegal throughout the United States under federal law, excluding medical and industrial uses through the imposition of an excise tax on all sales of hemp.
I didn't realize it was that far back. I know it originally dealt with hemp, right? And I know that hemp has a lot of uses. Obviously, they use it for ropes and papers and
they still.
Was it something related to textiles though? Is the fact that they wanted to not use hemp because of the cotton industry, and that's why
I'm sure it was an excise tax, so it was probably had to do with like the import and export of.
Yeah, I think there was something along those lines because of the import export of these textiles, and I think.
But they had cocaine in Coke back then too.
Way back. I mean, but let's talk about that real quick with as far as the gateway, if I can. SJ, like I always remember back in the 70s and 80s, people had the mantra that pot was a gateway drug. Do you actually hold to that anymore? Because I personally, I don't think that holds at all. I think that's complete bunk. But do you still think that it's a gateway drug? Because if there is, I have no evidence of it whatsoever. Have you seen any evidence for that?
Well, in one of the studies by the government, they talk about people thinking that it could be a gateway drug. I didn't see where they've proven that it is a gateway drug, other than to say that there are correlations between people who use pot and who also use, say, cocaine or other sorts of drugs like that. So there is a relationship between people who use multiple types of drugs, but I don't know if pot necessarily leads to that, because I can say if you think that pot is safe as alcohol, and there's many people who drink alcohol who have nothing to do with any drugs at all. So if it's similar to pot in some way, maybe it's the same sort of thing.
To me, I think pot is a little bit safer than alcohol.
I think we're gonna be on here by December, all five of us, smoking a joint. That's my.
I'm okay. I'll give it a shot one more time. If somebody had mentioned this, and this is funny.
I'm coming where you're at, Steve. We're gonna.
Do you guys remember? Yeah, I'm down with that. Do you guys remember Dare? Somebody mentioned Dare was a horrible thing.
Oh
and
my
I,
God,
Dare was, but it was funny.
yeah.
You'd have like a
shit
cop,
ever.
you would have like a cop who would actually bring in like 3 joints to pass around so kids would know, and then wonder why he gets back too.
Okay, I do have a funny story about Dare. This happened in for some reason when someone said Dare, it triggered something that happened to a friend or back then. Anyway, he was doing some kind of little skit where if you cut, I don't even know how it related to drugs or alcohol, but he made this one girl act like she was going to cut in front of him, and in line for movies, and he went bang, and he acted like he shot her. Well, it scared the poor girl to fucking death that she pissed her pants, and it was so fucking horrible, and it was just like.
That took a dark turn very quickly.
It did took a dark.
Yeah, we're
I
going
didn't say
this
it was a
one.
good thing. I was just saying he made some girl piss his pants for saying bang. So, sorry.
I bet she does not do well with the truth or dare game. I don't think that would go very well.
I have one last question, and it's not from the audience. It's actually from me, but this is again to the advocacy people who are pro pot. Do you think it should be legal in the military?
I never really gave it much thought, but I wouldn't.
Now there is something called NADSAP, Naval Alcohol. What is it? I don't remember the acronym. Even though I graduated from NADSAP, I don't remember the acronym. But it's naval training on alcohol, and everybody has to go through it. Anybody in the military has to go through the NADSAP program. And I don't remember them even addressing marijuana. I just remember basically they saying you can't smoke pot because you'll get kicked out, but they don't really go into detail. So if it is legal to smoke tobacco in the military, not on board ship anymore, and not in boot camp, you can't. They've changed that. But you can be in the military and smoke, even though it harms your PT. You can drink. God knows you can drink. I don't know anybody in the military who doesn't drink, I don't think. But do you advocate that they should also be legal in the military to smoke pot?
Well,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
They deserve more than anybody.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that either. I'm fine with it.
The shit that they have to go through.
I mean,
I got a cousin or a cousin-in-law, and shit he tells me, I'm like, do you want to share a joint or something? At this point, he's like, I can't. So.
Yeah, I don't think they should. But see, I agree. They will get kicked out though if they pop positive on a drug test, right?
Yeah.
Well, Brand, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I mean I was just going to say if it's you're already looking at alcohol being, like Steve put it, well rampant. So I don't see why not, honestly.
But do you think that there's a difference only for the fact that, like for example, you can't if you, it's going to sound weird, but people that smoke pot obviously do have some kind of impairments, obviously with alcohol as well. But people in the military tend to know you're not going to go on duty drunk. You're going to get screwed. You're going to get court-martialed, right? I mean, if you do want somebody running a nuclear reactor that's lit, you obviously you don't, right? So I mean, especially for like my thing with the Navy, which was around nuclear reactors, there might be something that's said that you don't want people smoking pot because it affects their job function in that case. Now I'm not making an argument from that, but I'm just saying, is there a possibility that we already allow alcohol? Do we want to and then add something else to it that are going to impair their job functionality in such critical job things, right?
I think if they allow alcohol, they should allow pot, for the sheer fact that pot's well known to help with people with PTSD.
Right, but that's PTSD. That's not that's not your job function, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about will it affect your ability to do your job in the military?
Well, nobody should be smoking up like at their own post or anything like that.
I think that everybody would agree. Yeah. Hey, I'm just hanging out here guarding the.
I can't tell you that I've worked with someone for 5 years, and I didn't know it until he actually told me it. But it was 3 years in. He was like, "Yeah, I smoke every day before I come to work," and he's the hardest worker ever. Not saying that
my brother's that way.
If they have a gun and they're on post, they should be smoking. But some people can function.
Absolutely, I know quite a few. Absolutely true. Yeah,
not me. I no, but but there's some people that can. Yeah.
SJ, I'm looking at different. I'm looking at different strains right now. We're gonna go
green crack.
heavy.
Sorry.
You want to go for energy? Is that what we're going for here?
I
Are we
want
looking
something
for
just.
that?
I just want to relax. I don't want energy. I want just to mellow out and look at the stars and go, God, those are awesome. That's what I want. Give me some of that.
Pineapple
What about it?
Express.
Let's let but like I said, I know SJ's crunch for time, so let's
We got about 6 minutes.
let everybody make a closing. Oh yeah, go ahead. You have something to say, Brand?
Oh no, you guys are good.
Oh, I thought he was saying something.
No,
My
I
bad.
just
thought
said that we have about 5 minutes before she's got to.
So SJ, I'm gonna let you kind of make a general overall closing statement to your argument, and then we'll let these guys do the same, and we will let you go to your. My bad. I'm getting distracted. My ADD's kicking in, guys. Don't mind me. SJ, it's all on you.
Okay, so the bottom line is I think that marijuana, recreational use of marijuana should not be legalized statewide or at the federal level. And I think that because we've shown, and I've shown you earlier, that there will be increases in the number of people using marijuana, and there are a lot of negative health impacts. So those are my main arguments that I'm bringing tonight, and the health impacts can be long term, especially when younger kids are using them. Now, I do understand there's a chance that maybe fewer younger kids will use it, but I'm not sure if that's guaranteed or if that's anything like that. And I think that if it's easily accessible, kids can walk into a 7-Eleven and buy pot, or they can have their friends who are a little bit older buy pot for them. I just think it opens up the doors. As far as the gateways thing, I just looked into a study that was found that they did studies on rodents, and they basically said that that the exposure to pot actually makes your mind, it changes your brain a little bit and makes you I'm sorry, wait a second. Hold on. It makes your brain respond more positively to other sorts of drugs. So that's just something to say as far as gateway drugs. But that's it. I really appreciate you bringing me on, and I loved hearing Frankie's and Brandon's perspectives. And of course, Kyle and Steve, you guys are always awesome. So thank you.
Well, I mean, it's our cross to bear in life.
You heard it from SJ right there. We're awesome.
Okay, so Brian or Frankie, which one of you want to roll?
I can go. I can just sum it up real quick here because there's one thing in particular we didn't get into, so I'll close with that. But first, so if no one's out there can be swayed, I guess if you're coming from the other side of the perspective, so to speak, increase in as far as economically, taxes coming in, less being spent on prohibition, less being spent in a myriad of ways going into prohibition. So I won't even go into all that. Health benefits such as pain relief and appetite increase for HIV patients, for example. If none of this sounds good to you and it can't sway your mind, think of the trees, guys. Think of the trees. Because, I mean, hemp can actually produce, I think it's like 4 to 10 acres or as much paper as like 4 to 10 acres of trees over a 20-year cycle, and it's like 4 months for that. So if none of that works out for you guys, just think of the trees, man. Come on.
Argument from trees. There you go.
That's what I want to close. I want to close on trees.
So allowing it for making paper translates to, hey, we can also smoke it now. Okay.
Fuck yeah.
Well, I mean,
Argument
at the end of the day, here's the thing. What is the topic? Trees.
Why not, man? Hey, you know what?
So I'm ending on trees.
Find trees and elephants that,
Rand, how many times did you hit that tonight? How many times did you hit
that? I actually had that prepared beforehand just to see how I would deliver it whenever it was time to go and
legalize pot.
Trees. I just want to point that out that's the result. Like the worst that happens is that you get an argument from trees. And I don't see.
Not one feeling hurt.
There's no non-sequitur there at all, is there?
I may have just made the first statement no one gets offended by.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
I did want to. I forgot to mention something with respect to the economic impact, and I did want to mention if we do have say 1 million more users per year, as we saw between 2007 and 2010, there will be that many more people who in that population, within that population, who become addicted, who might need substance abuse services, and those do cost money. So that's an expense to weigh against.
You're not advocating.
Yeah, you can't get addicted to pot.
I don't think you.
They
Yeah, I don't
studies,
think
sure, they studies that you can get addicted to pot.
I have never seen a study for a physical addiction.
I can pick up a joint and not.
Excellent. I'm going to post. I'll post these links.
Post those afterwards, because and let's differentiate. There's a difference between psychological effects and physical, because you only have so many cannabinoid receptors. You can only get so high. And I mean, you can smoke all you want, but you're only going to be able to have those cannabinoid receptors flooded with cannabinoids. So you can't die from an overdose of pot. Now, you could feel like it. I've been there, done that. I'm calling my friend up because I don't smoke very much, and she gave me a couple of joints, and I'm calling her up going, what the hell are these things? What am I doing? I'm dying here. She's like, Steve, you can't die from smoking pot. I said, listen, bitch, I'll be the first one to ever do so. Now, so
I'm dying.
She's like,
you can't OD from it, or I've never heard of a case of anybody ODing. I'm sure there probably might be one out there, but
no, you're right. You can't OD from it. That's what they've said.
You'd have to smoke
I was
lot.
fried. I was like, this is not a good.
My prediction, guys. My prediction stands before we go that I'm gonna actually give SJ until the kids, because I understand the mama bear instinct. She doesn't want her kids, hanging around with that, and that's totally acceptable. But when the kids go to college, SJ's gonna be lighting up. Watch.
I have a point there. All right, Frankie, why don't you give us the last word here, because you didn't get your little final. So
basically, if we're going to legalize it medically, we need to legalize it recreationally. There's no harm. There's many positive side effects that we just can't pass up, basically. So if we want to legalize it medically, we need to legalize it recreationally. Trust me, once y'all do, you will be thanking us, okay?
Or you just won't care.
Or you won't care. You be too high, and you were like, I don't give a fuck.
Well, just remember, there are a lot of drugs out there that are legal for medical reasons, but not for recreational. So keep that in mind.
Unfortunately, well,
all right, this was great, guys. This was very entertaining topic. So I thank you all for joining us on this.
Thank you.
Trees, thank you.
Tomorrow, flat Earth again. So
well, we do have a change for tomorrow on the flat Earth, though. But by the way, Sean Huffer's father, as people know, has passed away. Red's Rhetoric has to take care of Sean and some few other things tomorrow. So if you have not been aware of that, I guess there's a fundraiser for Sean and things like that nature. But we will be having a substitute for Red's tomorrow, unfortunately, because he will not be able to make it because of the death in Sean's family.
Who is that substitute?
We'll have some kind of substitute though going on.
Oh, great. Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow then, ladies and gentlemen.
Giggity.
Good night.
Good night.